Okay, we're back in Animate. We're going to create a new file with the logo Illustrator file that we just created in the previous Animate or tutorial. So we'll do File New, and it remembers the size that I had set up from the last time, but the Illustrator file actually has the option to resize the Animate file that we're working on. So just to show you what that looks like, I'm just going to go ahead and force this to be a square. And this is important, 30 frames and HTML5 canvas. You want to make sure you get that right. We'll go ahead and click on Create. Now we're going to go to the File drop-down menu, and we're going to slide down to Import to Stage. And there's the logo that we created. And so the settings are, one, if you have more than one artboard in Adobe Illustrator, you can select it here. And that way, if you have a couple of variations for your logos in Illustrator, you can import them separately. But we've only got the one. The size in here and the placement are important. So the placement, we want that on, and the size. That's pretty much it. This is going to set it back to 300 by 600. We don't want to make this into a bitmap. We want to keep it a vector image, and we don't want unused symbols. One, we don't have any because we deleted them from the Adobe Illustrator file, but if we had those extra Adobe symbols, they would come in with the import. We don't need them. So we'll go ahead and hit OK, import, and it drops in our artwork. It resized the animation, and we're going to go in and make a quick little animation, show you how this works. So I'm going to go inside one of the petals, and that takes me inside the petal symbol. All of these, by the way, if I go back to the main stage, all of these are instances of the same petal. So if I come into this one, so if I go to my folder here in the Illustrator symbols, you can see I've only got the one symbol. And this one's being repeated around here all the way around 8 times. So that's that animation. So I'm inside the petal. Here's where I want to create my animation. And because I want to be able to bend the animation, I'm going to use the Insert Regular Motion Tween. And I'll hit OK. It's going to convert the symbol into a movie clip, and it's going to modify the timeline so that it gets converted for a tween, but it's going to be the regular motion tween, not the classic tween. So we'll go ahead and hit OK. It generates that. Now we want to extend our animation, so we're going to go ahead over here and do an F6. That extends the timeline, so it's going to last for 60 frames. I'm going to go back to the first frame, and I'm going to move this out of the way. We're just going to do a quick little test to see how this works, actually how it doesn't work. And right here we can see that the one animation works fine, but if we go to the main scene, we'll see that nothing happens here. In fact, if we try to run the animation, nothing's going on. And that's because the original petal is still a graphic symbol, and it's still locked to the main timeline. So in order for me to be able to see the animation, I need to make sure that the outside, the main timeline on the main stage lasts for 60 frames. So it doesn't have to be a keyframe. An F5 will do it. And then now I have an animation that I can see. So if I run this, I can go ahead and see the animation taking place. Now just so I can see the animation a little bit better, I'm going to go ahead and put my key line around the animation. So make sure that you return to the main layer so that you're in scene number 1. Click on the first frame, then go to your window drop-down menu and grab your code snippets. And the one we want is the key line. So we'll double click on that. And remember, this has got to stop. If I run this right now, it'll center, it'll give me the line, but it's going to stop on me. And so nothing's going to happen. So I got to turn that stop off. So the way you do that, you can either delete it, or you can do a couple of forward slashes in front of it. I'll just go ahead and delete it. So I'll just, from here, go straight up and delete it. And so now when I run this, we'll see the animation, and it's in a loop. It'll start all over again. So I want this to animate only one time, so I'm going to go to the very last frame over here, and I'm in the actions frame. It doesn't matter if you're going to use the shortcut. I'm going to use the HTML canvas timeline navigation option. If I pop that open, there's my stop frame. Or you can just add a keyframe in here and type it in yourself manually, but we'll be lazy just for now, just so we can keep on testing the canvas. So we'll double click on that. It puts the stop at the very last frame. There's the stop. Here are the instructions for it. I'll get rid of that extra return, and I'll get rid of all this other stuff up in here. The gray text is just the directions, so I'll delete that. Now when I run this, we'll see the animation kind of come to a close. Now I can start messing with the animation. Okay, so I'm going to go close my actions. I'm going to go back inside the pedal, and here's my frames, my animations. Now normally it's a little tough to work with the ease in and ease out, but since there are only two keyframes, it's going to work very nicely. So I'm going to have this start really fast on the ease. I'm going to click, drag this. It's going to go 100 miles an hour, and then it's going to come to a nice soft spot. If I run this, you can see how it slowly slows down and gets to where it's supposed to be. So if I run this, you can see the animation doing that. Now the other thing that I want to do is I want to give it a bend, and the nice thing about this animation is that it does that. I can bend this. I'll click over here and I'll bend over here on this side, and then I'll click over here and modify that maybe a little further out. Let's see what that looks like. So they're coming in, and I'll even add a rotation to it. So I'll come back over here, and I'll come over here to the keyframe, and then I'll click on my artwork, grab my free transform tool, and I'm just going to give it a rotation like that. And I'll just kind of test it, see what it's starting to look like. And that looks interesting. Let's see what the whole thing looks like. And one more thing, I'm going to go ahead and make this into an alpha. Now when you're working with the regular motion tween, you have to change the alpha in both locations. So on the first frame in here, we're going to set that alpha effect to 0, but it changes the animation throughout. So I got to go to the very last frame over here, click on there, and then crank my alpha, click on the artwork over here, and then crank my alpha all the way up. Okay, so if I scrub this, you can see the pedal slowly turn in, and we'll go ahead and run that. And just one more thing to make it look a little bit more interesting. I'll come back over here and I'll mess with the size. So I'm going to just, with the free transform tool, I'm just going to scale that up a little bit. I'm holding the shift key down to constrain it, and we'll see what that does. You can see it comes in to the original size, and here's what it looks like. Okay, so there's our banner. It's working really nicely, and we've got the logo coming in. We're on the main timeline, and we can come over here and see the whole thing. Now the last thing I want to do is I want to add a button. But the button I want to be invisible, because no matter where I click on the banner, I want the little Mickey Mouse glyph to show up. So I'm going to start off by making a button layer, and I'll go ahead and call that button. And we'll come over here and we're going to create some artwork right in here. I'm going to lock this so I don't accidentally select it, and I'm also going to lock my actions layer so I don't accidentally put artwork in there. So I'm on here. I'm going to create a rectangle, and I usually like to make my buttons green so that they stand out and I can easily identify them. And so I'm going to make it exactly the same size as the artboard. So I'll go ahead and hold the Option key down, and the size of the artboard is 300, and its height is 600. And it doesn't matter where you draw it from the center or not. We're going to have to recenter this. We'll go ahead and hit OK, and then I'm going to select this, and I'll go ahead and zero its position out. So X0 and Y0, and it goes right to where it's supposed to be. So this is going to be converted into a button. So we're going to go to the Modify, and we're going to Convert Symbol, or just do an F8. and we'll get that little dialog window that's asking us what do we want to make out of it, and we want to make it into a button. And just for the sake of having a name that I can easily recognize inside the library, I'll go ahead and call this button, and we'll hit OK. Okay, so in the library, in here you can see there's the button. So if I run it, I'm going to have this big green box in front of my whole artwork. The animation's still taking place on the bottom, but when I roll over the button, you can see that I have a Mickey Mouse glyph show up. And right now what I want to happen is when I click on the button, I want it to take me to a website. So I'll go ahead and close that, and I'm going to click on the button, and now I'm going to go back to my code snippets. And in here, there's an option in the HTML for a action, and the action is go to a web page. So while I'm on the first frame, this is important, you want to be on the first frame, and you want to be on your button, and then you want to go ahead and click on go to website. It's going to by default take us to the Adobe website. So we'll just go ahead and double click. It's going to add the action up in here as well. It doesn't matter whether this is locked or not. So we'll go ahead and click to go to web page. That's what we want. And it's going to add the code. I don't have a name for this. There is no name here in the button. So it's going to go ahead and call it button number 1, which is fine. If I wanted to call it CSUF, I could have named it before, but I'm not worried about it. I'll just go ahead and hit OK. Okay, so again, if I come back over here and I click on the button in here, you can see that it called it button number 1. If we go to our code, we can see where the JavaScript was dropped. And so these are instructions that are telling us how to modify this. And over here, whenever I click on button number 1, it's going to be listening for an event. The event that it's listening for is a click, and it's going to run this function that's called fl_click to go to web page, and the function is right down here. So this button click calls this function, and it's this function that sends it to the URL. So if I double click on here, and let's say I change this name to Fullerton, and got to change that to edu. If I run this, now it's animating in the background. The green box is still there, but if I click on this, you'll see that it adds the Fullerton web page. If I come back over here and I click on here, it keeps on adding more and more tabs. And I don't want that. I just wanted to add one tab. So let's close this. And let's come back over here. And so in here, you just have to type in another name. It can be anything. It can be something like new. That'll do it. So now every time I click on here, it's going to add the one tab. If I come back over here and I click on it, it just goes to that tab that I've already created. The other option is changing the name to something that makes sense to you. So I'll just type in CSUF, and that'll do it. So this is standard HTML5 type stuff. Come back over here, click on it, just goes to the same tab. It's doing what it's supposed to. If I want it to open on the same page, then I want to do an underscore and type in the word self. And now when I run this, it's going to replace this web page with the Fullerton web page. So the only way to get back to it is to go back. Okay, so now we want to make our button invisible. And we're going to come over here. We'll close this. We don't need to look at our code anymore. So here's our button artwork right in here. We've selected that. And buttons have a couple of options. And I'll just show you how it works here so you get a general idea. And I'm going to undo this. I have a simpler solution to this, but I just want to show you how this works. If I do a couple of F6s, F6 and F6, I have an over and under option. So while the button hasn't been clicked on, it's going to be green. When I roll over it, I'm going to change the color of the button. Let's have it change to yellow. And then when I click down on the button, I'm going to change the color over here to another color. So we'll go ahead and make that kind of a mustardy green. Okay, so now if I run this, the button is programmed. Roll over, changes to yellow. Click on it, gets that kind of mustardy green. And then it goes to the website. So that's the way the button how the button's supposed to work. You do the rollover, changes, lets you know that it's active. When you click on it, it changes its color and it bounces you to the place where the link is. But we want this to be an invisible button. I don't want this. So let me undo my additions of my keyframes here. I'm going to do a couple of undos. Get back to the single frame. And this is what we started off with. When we originally had our first button in here with the green box, we went inside it and we had this in here. Here's the trick to making an invisible button. You take the original artwork and you drag it into the hit area. The hit area is what determines the active area of the button is. So if I run this now I will see my animation, and no matter where I roll over, I still get the Mickey Mouse glove because the hit area is there, and then this will still open up the page. So if I come back over here, I can do a reload if I want to see the animation again. And at any given time, I can click on here, and it's going to take me to the other web page. So for your assignment is to complete an animation like this and activate the link and have it go to the web page. So, and then what you want to do is just save this, save, and I'll just call it web logo for the lack of a better name. I'll save that there. And this is what you'll be submitting to make up for the loss, the rainy day Monday that we lost this week. Okay, good luck. And if you can't get it quite right, think of this as an in-class project, but you can always come back and review this animation. Okay, take care.